All right, only weeks now to go before the midterm elections, which could return the Republicans to power in the House and possibly the Senate as well. And debate about the expiring Bush tax cuts is expected to play a big role in those elections. Our chief Washington correspondent, Peter Cook, is in New York today, and he's brought a key Democratic leader with him. Peter?
Thanks very much, Matt. Joined here by Senator Richard Durbin, the Democrat of Illinois, the number 2 Democrat in the U.S. Senate. Thanks for the time. Appreciate you joining us. And let me ask you, first of all, the question that Matt just hinted at, midterm elections. If the election were held today, would Democrats lose not only the House but the Senate as well?
I don't believe so. And I think that what you're going to see in the next 6 or 7 weeks, as we close down this election campaign, many of these races are going to get a lot closer, and it's going to be a late night. Who would have guessed 2 or 3 weeks ago we'd be talking about Alaska and Delaware, states that were safely in the Republican column and now are front and center in terms of the contest that we're about to face.
Has the Tea Party been the best thing for Democrats, particularly in the Senate?
Remains to be seen. I would say that a lot of Republican leaders, at least privately, say to me, this is creating a problem. They thought Mike Castle was their strongest candidate for the Senate in Delaware. And now Ms. O'Donnell is someone who may or may not be a strong candidate.
Well, let me ask you about what the role the president's going to play. A lot of people look at the president's agenda, what he's carried out over the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, and they look at that and they say that is the reason Democrats are trailing right now. The Americans are out of step with the Obama agenda, and the president himself is going to have to be the one to energize the base.
Well, the president is an important player. There's no one like him. He's a leader of our party, and he will attract more attention than any senator or congressman giving a speech. But I would say that most elections are about the future and not the past. It isn't a matter of the president or Democrats thinking, well, we did such a good job, we really don't have to campaign. People want to know, where are we going from here? The unemployment figures are still too high, and the president concedes that. Without his recovery plan, without his stimulus plan, we would be in much worse shape today. At least that's what I believe. And so we can certainly make that case. But overall, the voters are going to vote their pocketbooks, and they're concerned about the uncertainty, and they want to know which political party offers the best alternative out of this recession.
It seems the president may have sent mixed messages with his big stimulus package, and then concerns about raising taxes because he wants to save $700 billion, which is, of course, less than the stimulus package in the first place. Does the Democratic Party have a solid direction? I mean, do you want to go in one way for the elections?
Absolutely, and let me nail that one, because the president's stimulus package had the largest tax cut for working families in modern history. And now what we're pushing for is a tax cut for families making less than $250,000 or less each year, which again will help working families. We want to focus the money on those who have paid the heaviest price over the last 10 years when wages didn't grow to keep up with inflation and when the recession hit and ate into their savings. So I think it's entirely consistent. It's what we believe is a good, solid message, not only to bring an end to the recession, but to ask people to continue down this course in the future.
Although a lot of economists, including Richard Barrow from Harvard, we had on last week, and Glenn Hubbard, who we're going to have on later today, say that cutting the marginal tax rate for the highest income earners will have the strongest effect on economic growth.
I couldn't disagree more. These are people less likely to spend, more likely to save or invest, and not necessarily invest in the United States. So how can that be something that we want to go into a deeper deficit for, to give the wealthiest people in America hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax breaks? You know, the middle-income families in America have sacrificed greatly, paying for wars, sending their sons and daughters off in service, losing their jobs, seeing their savings hit, and now we're being told that we should shed tears over the wealthiest among us because they're just not getting a good enough tax break. I don't buy it.
Well, I'm not sure if it's the tax break that we want to shed tears over. It's economic growth that we want to push, right? I mean, it's not about who gets money and who doesn't.
Let's go back.
It's about boosting GDP and creating jobs.
Let's go back to Economics 101. Marginal propensity to save. Remember that in the first class? Who is more likely to save a dollar? A person who is wealthy or a person who is living paycheck to paycheck? The person who is wealthy. So if we want to put a dollar into the economy to buy goods and services, give the money to working families, middle-income families, not to the people who are looking for some new investment that they might get into, even overseas.
Senator, there's still some Democrats, as you know, within your caucus who have expressed support for, if nothing else, extending all the Bush tax cuts even temporarily. If it comes to the floor, a temporary extension of the Bush tax cuts for everyone, Are there enough votes on the Democratic side to prevent that from happening and the president's plan, again, passing?
There won't be 60 votes for the Bush tax cuts, the Bush economic policy. That's not going to happen in the United States Senate. The question is whether we can put 60 votes together facing a deadline, not our own deadline, but a deadline that the Bush tax cuts had built in that said all the tax cuts will end at the end of this year if we do nothing. What we say is don't turn your back on those working families, people making $250,000 or less. Make sure that they have the peace of mind of knowing that tax cut's still protected.
And does that proposal get voted on before the midterm election in the Senate? Some have suggested even next week. Could it be next week? Will it be next week?
I talked to Senator Reid. Our goal is to get that voted on before we take a break in the next 2 weeks.
All right. And Matt, I know you had more questions as well, but not only about the Bush tax cuts going forward, but as you look at the business climate right now, a lot of people raising concerns. Again, these taxes, maybe they don't affect business directly, but do they cloud the economic situation going forward?
Well, let me tell you what clouds the situation. Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican Senate leader, introduced a bill last week to permanently extend the tax cuts, which the Washington Post said will nearly double our national debt. Now, if you're talking about certainty in the future, do business leaders, does the business community, are they concerned about our debt? I think they are. And if they are, they have to step back and say, Senator McConnell, as someone has written, you've just filed a bankruptcy petition for the United States of America. We can't have that.
Senator, you've served a lot of time in the Senate and a lot of time before that in Congress for your state. I wonder what you think about the Tea Party and its ability, even if it doesn't get a lot of officials elected in the end, to pull both parties over to the right.
Well, it's certainly going to pull the Republican Party over to the right as they defeat candidates like Congressman Mike Castle in Delaware, who was considered to be their strongest candidate for the United States Senate. And what I've found in my state is the Tea Party, by and large, is a subset of the Republican Party. There may be a few new faces there, but by and large, they represent the most conservative members of the Republican Party, and they're trying to bring the whole party over to that position. History tells us that doesn't serve a party very well. When you get too far in the extreme right or left, the American voters walk away from you.
Illinois politics, Rahm Emanuel, if he leaves the White House as chief of staff to run for mayor of Chicago, how big a loss is that for the president? Does he have a chance to win in Chicago?
Rahm is an extraordinary chief of staff. I've seen him at his best, and he's done some things which, behind the scenes, which will never get reported in history. It's not likely they will be. But he has the energy and the intelligence that the president needs in that job. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You know, the Dailies have been in the ascendancy in city politics in Chicago for decades. He could be a powerful force. He has to make his decision soon, get on the ground. You can't win this from the White House. You have to win it from the streets of Chicago.
Do you think he runs?
I think it more likely than not, but he has not made a final decision.
Let me just ask you finally, you're here in New York, the president comes here as well, UN meetings, but he's also got a fundraiser. Are you all giving up any hope that Wall Street backs Democrats this year?
Some Wall Street leaders will not because of Wall Street reform, but it had to be done. In the end, it's going to make a stronger business climate in America. We'll have the rule of law and the transparency that many other nations just envy. And we will have learned from our mistakes. And that'll be a positive thing, even though some individuals may have a different point of view.
Senator Durbin, thank you very much for the time.
Senator Durbin, thank you very much. Peter, thank you very much as well. Peter Cook, our chief Washington correspondent, and the senior senator from Illinois, Dick Durbin.